Hello, everybody. When cooking at home, eating locally is as easy as going to the farmer's market. But if you're eating out, it can be another story entirely. To talk about fine farm dining is today's guest, John Des Rosiers, the chef and founder of Inovasi and the Otherdoor, two incredible restaurants in Lake Bluff, Illinois. Together, we'll be talking about the hurdles in serving locally grown food, what got John interested in the good food movement, and what to be looking for in farm-to-table dining. Before we start the interview, we just want to tell you about our new website, intellectualagrarian.com. There you can find past episodes of the podcast, notes from the show, videos that we shoot on location at farms, and various articles about farm life and the musings of the agrarian mind. Please take a look at it. We're very excited. Now, on to the show. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Now, before we get too far underway, can you tell the audience a little about yourself and your restaurants?
Yeah, my name is John Des Rosiers. I've been cooking professionally for 25 years now, since I was 15. I own Inovasi, which was my first restaurant that I opened on my own back in 2009. Contemporary American, all local farms, everything in the restaurant made from scratch. We even make our own vinegar, some of our own cheese. Bacon, pretty much everything we can get our hands on, we like to cure and make ourselves. And then 4 years ago, I opened the Otherdoor, which is kind of a take on the process that Chipotle uses, only, kind of more specific, smaller farms, everything made from scratch, a few more options, things like that. A little more art, a little more soul to it.
Perfect. Now, what does Inovasi mean? Why did you choose that as the name of the restaurant?
It means innovation. And it's actually an Indonesian language. I like the way it looks. I thought it had a cool sounding name. Those are the first two reasons. I wanted to name the restaurant something that meant innovation, not because we wanted to completely reinvent everything about food. It wasn't really that. It was just that we had a little different approach to doing things than what most restaurants do, and certainly most restaurants in our area do. Everything from our particular style of cuisine, the way we put together flavors and textures, and then also, obviously using local farms and seasonality and things like that. So it was kind of a whole combined idea. In addition, even the way that the restaurant physically changes, we remodeled it 3 times in our first 8 years. And the goal of the restaurant was always to be a kind of a constant evolution to go over time. It wouldn't be one static thing, but it would constantly change. And it's done that. It's definitely different today than it was when we first opened it 9 years ago.
Wow. So your restaurants emphasize local food. What was it that got you involved in the good food movement?
Flavor first. If you want the very best quality ingredients and you want the best tasting of anything you buy, you go to the people that are very good at it and do it the best and care for it the most and have the best farms. That's really, my idea of the best way to start. I want all of our food has lots of deep, rich flavor. Mm-hmm. I want carrots that actually taste like carrots, which most people don't know what carrots are supposed to taste like. And carrots are really great when they're really good carrots.
Yeah.
And beets are amazing when they're really good beets. Really that the quality part is the first factor. And then the sustainability aspect and the other benefits and supporting local community, all those are secondary. And I think some people are, at least a little bit surprised when I talk about the taste first, because there's a lot of good feeling about buying food from local farmers and stuff like that. But if they grew really mediocre tasting food, nobody would care.
That's right.
I think the more exceptional quality is the first thing. And then everything else is behind that. But usually you get exceptional quality with locally grown sustainable stuff. But there are farms sometimes that we taste that we don't bring into the restaurant because their quality is kind of okay. Mm-hmm. Or we had a farm last year that gave us potatoes, but their soil was way too acidic to grow potatoes in. So they tasted really weird. They didn't cook right. That farm should be growing something else besides potatoes, and they didn't know that. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely things that we turn down, but taste is first, for sure.
I totally agree.
With the number of farms you have to choose from now.
If I'm going to eat, I want to eat something that tastes good. I mean,
Yeah.
why
Me too.
why waste your time? When I worked at farmers markets, the thing that always surprised me was, especially with eggs, people always like, these are the best tasting eggs I've ever had. And I'd always grown up with farm eggs. So I was like, yeah, it tastes like an egg. And then one time a horrible situation happened where my mom actually had to buy store eggs and I had an egg. I'm like, what is that? Was it sick? I mean, it was this pale, disgusting thing. And then I finally realized that's what most people suffer with. They don't understand flavor, real food. Just boggles the mind.
Yeah, and then you also don't need as much of it when it actually tastes better.
Mm-hmm. It's got more nutrition to it.
Yeah, we could all use a little less food in our life.
That's sad. That is true.
Most of us can anyway.
So, what are some of the challenges you've faced with sourcing local food for your restaurants, especially since you're looking for good flavor?
Yeah, you know what? The most immediate challenge for us. Well, there's two things that are hard. One of them is the true seasonality. Even today, after 8 years or a little more than 8 years, it's not possible for us to be 100% committed to seasonality because the market, all of our consumers are used to getting whatever they want whenever they want it. They're used to seeing asparagus from Peru in the middle of January.
Yeah.
And tomatoes, all year round that come from God knows where that look like little oranges. So, but there's been enough generations where it's been like that everyone is used to it. And it's absolutely sunk in their brain where nobody has a natural expectation of seasonality anymore. So, because of that, if they go out and eat at 5 restaurants around us and they have, beautiful greens in the middle of the winter and, other green vegetables and tomatoes and whatever, and we don't, it looks like we're doing something wrong because we don't have those things. So it's perceived as a negative. So there's a limit to how far we can push that in the wintertime. And we really only get 5 or 6, really it's more like 5 good months up here because we're so far north.
Yes.
And with our winters and stuff like that. So there aren't a lot of really great things we can use and grow in the wintertime. So we definitely change, but it's, and we're in the summer, almost, 95% of our stuff comes from within 100 miles of the restaurant. But in the winter, that drops to like 60% because we have to be a viable commercial enterprise. We have to be open, have customers and be busy. Otherwise, nothing we do is, makes any sense.
Or dollars.
So we'll buy some vegetables of what we need from different places, just to make sure that we have some things on the menu. And by the time we get to February, people are really itching, man. You can tell that they're like, all right, we've had 3 months of, roots and squash and hard stuff. And we want something fresh and bright and pretty and green. And at that point, we're still 3 months away from getting that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's that part of it's definitely a struggle. And then the price is the other part. Our food is supposed to cost more than it does. The thing that makes American society so great about, our innovation and the ability for us to find new ways to build things and make things more affordable. There's so many positive benefits for society in general from all the things that we've been able to create. But on the food side of it, that's a negative thing. It's not good to find new ways for animals to grow cheaper, faster, no matter what. And for vegetables to do the same thing. It creates lots of other inherent problems for us. But by making the food cheaper, it makes people generally think that food that's actually grown the way it's supposed to be grown is not supposed to be that expensive. And so it takes a lot of time and care and effort to grow a cow the right way.
Absolutely.
And it takes twice as long, which makes your land costs take twice as much and twice the feed for it and everything else. And not everybody understands that. 100 years ago, people ate steak. It was rare. You didn't have beef that often because it took a long time to grow a cow.
Yeah.
And it cost a lot of money. And now it doesn't. It's cheap, So not everybody understands the long-term value of eating really, really well. And paying a little more for it now will mean a whole lot more in savings, not only in the general health of your life later on, but also in the amount you're not going to have to spend on getting all sorts of treatments and drugs and things like that as you get older. We don't really think in terms of 40 or 50 or 60 years down the road. We think about 5 minutes in front of us and that's it. And that's a problem for our food system.
Absolutely. Constant struggle with, and that's part of the reason we do things like this show is to educate people. And I'm glad to see that. I think in today's day and age with farmers markets and restaurants like Inovasi, more and more people are starting to learn about it. but there's still a large educational gap.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. I mean, it took us a good 120, 130 years to get into the position we're in now. It's going to take at least that long to get out of it if we ever, if enough of it ever really gets out. But it's a lot different now than it was 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely getting better, and it gets better all the time. But it's going to take a while. It's going to take generations of work, not just 20 years of one set of people doing it. It's going to take all of our kids and grandkids to really fix everything.
Absolutely. How many farms do you source from?
Right now, we're about 30. I took on 3 more this year, and that's about as many as we can do. In fact, 30 is probably 10 too many. So we end up buying, 2 products from one farm and 2 from another farm and 2 from another one. And but we have one guy for pork, one guy for beef, one guy for chicken, one guy for like 2 vegetables, and we have one guy that only does cherry tomatoes and cucumbers because that's all that he grows. He's a new farmer that just started out this year. That's about it. And honestly, that's enough difficulty in ordering the way it is that way. So I don't really need any more.
Absolutely. And it comes with its own challenges because everyone does things a little bit differently. And it's not like you're ordering from one supplier that you can get everything at once. You have to pick and choose. Okay, I need X amount from you, but you don't quite have enough. So then I need some of it from you.
Yeah. And if the weather bolts if the weather gets up to 95 degrees for 3 days, half of our lettuce is gone and we're not going to have arugula for the next 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that's not an easy thing when you're trying to, manage supply chains for a restaurant when your supply chain changes constantly.
And people really forget about the seasonality of food, not just in terms of you can only get certain foods for so long, but like this year, a lot of, especially in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, I've known a couple of farmers, diversified vegetable operations, they lost half of their product just through the rains that we had with so much flooding.
Yeah.
And
it makes it's a big difference. And when it's not this hot either, tomatoes are not going to be the same way as they are when you've got a really nice hot long summer. Mm-hmm. And when there's too much water, the tomato stays watery. You're right. The weather and the way that the farms react to it change a lot of things.
This is the joy of local food, and people really need to appreciate more because I think that having issues like this reminds us of how special it really is in today's day and age to
I agree.
Be able to have, a shortage of a product just reminds us, wow, we should really appreciate when it's there. That's why I always only eat apples, or at least I try to only eat apples during apple season when I can get them from the orchard. Because if I go to a grocery store, they just taste bad.
They're not the same.
It's just no flavor. Again, it's flavor that makes the difference. So what do you think is the key to bringing farm-to-table food?
Finding a balance. Even though I think there's a lot of people that don't really understand, at least from my point of view, why it's important to eat like this and why it's important to support the local community and stuff like that. They do understand the difference between A and B when you put it in front of them. Mm-hmm. And when you put a regular beet in front of somebody and a farm-raised beet in front of somebody and they eat it, they immediately understand what the difference is. And then they want that farm-raised version all the time. And the more that you can do that thing and combine that with showing them that there's a way to do it affordably. Our restaurant, it does not charge what we should be charging for our level of expense on food. We should be about 20% more expensive than we are. I'm pretty good at managing our food costs and things like that so that we can still be profitable and serve really high quality food because I want to be really competitive against the other restaurants around me, even though they're buying lesser quality food than we are. So I think that if you can do both of those things, show people how great tasting stuff is and what it's like when it's in perfect season and when it's coming from somebody who really cared about how they grew it, combine it with making it, a similar price to what they're used to paying for something. If we can do more of both of those things, more and more people will start to understand. And as soon as you start getting the person turned on to that farm-raised beet, they won't want to have the other one. Mm-hmm. They'll just skip it the rest of the year and they'll wait until they get the great ones, coming up now. So
education for customers, that's really the summary of it because you don't know what you've got unless you don't have it. And when you have to eat a poor substitute, you quickly realize how good the other one is.
Yep. I agree. You got to show them the difference. If you don't show them the difference, then it's just like everything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, we really are that way as people. We kind of need to be slapped in the face with a fish or a beet before we get something drilled through our skulls.
Yeah, it does. It takes time.
Now, one of the things...
Go ahead.
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
Even for my father, he knows, he loves the restaurant, and we all grew up eating kind of normal food in a regular blue collar family and stuff like that. We didn't grow up with anything, super fresh, not in front of us all the time anyway. And, he hates, I use the beets all the time because he hates beets, until he came to the restaurant one day and ate ours that came off of one of our farms and just north of the restaurant. And he asked me what it was. And I said, that's a beet. And he said, beets aren't supposed to taste like that. And I said, you've been eating the wrong beets your whole life. And so that's, even though I've cooked for him for 20 years, at a really high level, even he didn't really understand the difference between how great something is supposed to be until you put it in front of them, especially with people that have something they don't like Brussels sprouts. Mm-hmm. And you do Brussels sprouts from a great place and they're done in a really good way. And people are like, wow, this is what Brussels sprouts are really supposed to be like. The more of that you can open people's eyes about and show them, I think the better off everybody is.
Yes, that reminds me, my father, there are a lot of things he did not like eating growing up as a kid. And then when he got married to my mom started making this stuff, and he's like, what are you feeding me? She's like, it's X. He says, but X isn't supposed to taste good. Turns out my grandmother was a very bad cook.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to ruin vegetables for the rest of their lives, is to give them a bad version of it when they're a kid.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm still scarred once or twice from visiting my grandparents, but that's besides the point. Now, I have to say, one of the things I love about your website, on the Otherdoor, is that you have this, you say here, the secret is old, real old. We want to make things the way they were before. 150 years ago, there was no such thing as organic. They simply called it food. We buy from farmers who give a damn about how they grow and what you eat. So do we. That's powerful stuff. In my grandmother's day and age, that's the way it was. My great-grandmother's day and age. They were raised on farms, World War II, Great Depression and all that, but they still were okay because they raised their own food and actually stayed at about the same level they were during the Depression because they could eat. And they ate good food because they raised it themselves. I just have to compliment you on that. Is a wonderful, wonderful piece of prose.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I think a lot of restaurants now it's easy for a restaurant just to say, hey, we buy lots of local stuff, because it's a lot easier to do now than it was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Even 10 years ago, it was difficult. But it's definitely easier now. There's a couple of distributors that are doing a really great job, like Local Foods down in Chicago. They represent, over 100 different local farms. So distributors like that certainly make it easier for restaurants. But it's our whole idea is not some new invention. I think sometimes we get credit for being like, oh, cool, you're like on the cutting edge with farmers growing stuff. And I always say, no, we're not. It's the opposite of that. We're trying not to be cutting edge. We're trying to just let farmers grow good stuff, bring it in the restaurant and cook it and don't mess it up. That's it. It's not some radical idea. It's really, really old. And that's kind of where the idea for that whole thing came from.
Well, I think it's just phenomenal. Now, if someone's out on the town and due to geographical distance can't go to Inovasi, because otherwise it would be the obvious choice in this scenario, what should a consumer be looking for in a locally sourced restaurant?
You know what? Look at the restaurant's menu and see if they write the farms that they support on the menu. Or if there's a restaurant that says, we buy stuff from local sources, ask them, where does it come from? Customers always ask me, how am I supposed to know? When I go to this other restaurant that I go to, what am I supposed to do? And I always tell them, ask them where they get their chicken from. Say, what farm does my chicken come from? What farm does your steak come from? And make them answer you. And if they don't have an answer, don't go to that restaurant, or tell that restaurant, I'm not going to come back here because you guys can't even tell me where my food comes from. I think it's a really simple way for people to ask and find out, one, what is the restaurant's philosophy like, and do they really care about it? And two, what is the quality of what you're going to be eating? And if every consumer in America just started asking restaurants, where does my food come from? The restaurants would start paying attention and everything would start to shift really quickly. Because if they realize we're going to lose customers unless we can start figuring out where to get better food from, and not just buying stuff off of a Cisco truck. That kind of natural consumer driven change is the easiest way to make everything get better. And all it starts with is a simple question. It's an easy thing that everybody can do.
Yeah. So, as a treat, can you tell us what your favorite dish on the Inovasi menu is?
Oh, I hate favorites. I don't have favorite colors or favorite bands or favorite anything. I don't know.
Well, it'd be something good for someone to try.
I like a lot of different things. You know what? The brisket's amazing right now. So it's a 28-day dry aged brisket. We do it in the Texas style, so it's marinated with fresh garlic and dried oregano and lots of peppercorns. We smoke it for about 12 hours, and then we finish it kind of in a gentle bath of sake for about 4 hours. It's got little baby tomatoes from a farm that's actually managed by the Chicago Botanical Garden. They're right up the road from us. They've got like 15 of these little farms all over Chicagoland, and they're all in depressed areas. And they teach kids, poor kids at high schools, how to grow things, how to manage a little farm, how to pick them, package them, and they sell them at farmers markets. So they're actually teaching them a skill and what real food looks like, because especially in lots of poor neighborhoods, they never see fresh vegetables. So they grow these great little tomatoes. And then a little bit of house pickled ginger, and some micro radishes. That's it. It's just really good. The brisket is really, really good though. It's yummy. I like it a lot.
You're making me hungry.
Good. That's the idea.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John. It's been a great talking with you. As we wrap up things here, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Just come visit the restaurants. We're up in Lake Bluff. It's going to be a little bit of a drive for some people, but it's a beautiful town. It's a really small community. It's an old cottage town on the north side, the north end of the North Shore of Chicago. We're right on the lake. It's a beautiful place to come and hang out and be in. It's a really neat place to see. The restaurant, obviously I like it. I think we do a pretty good job. It's a neat environment. There's not a lot of stuff like it. There's definitely not a lot of things like it in the suburbs. So it's a pretty unique place to come and check out.
And can people learn more about you on a website or Facebook?
Yeah, so our website is inovasi.us. That's it. No .com afterwards, just inovasi.us. We're an American restaurant. Our cuisine blends multiple cultures together. It's influenced by all the different people that work in the restaurant. So we chose the .us on purpose. And then you can also visit us. There's all kinds of information on Facebook. Just put in Inovasi in Facebook and we pop right up. But you can find out anything about the restaurant just by Googling us. So it's pretty easy.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, John. I look forward to the next time I get to Inovasi. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks, Terrence.
If you're ever in Lake Bluff, Illinois, be sure to stop in at either Inovasi or the Otherdoor. It's a meal you won't want to miss. Take a look at what they're doing by either following them on Facebook or take a look at their website. Links are in the description below. You can support the Intellectual Agrarian Podcast by subscribing on whatever listening medium you use, and leave us a nice review. Once again, please take a look at our new website. We're really excited to have it up and running. Again, it's intellectualagrarian.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, at The Intellectual Agrarian. Thanks for listening. As always, I'm Terrence Lehue. This has been the Intellectual Agrarian Podcast, reminding you to keep farming the dream.